stuff. But yeah, that's why we're in the position to make a lot of money, is because we're dealing with people like that and we solve big problems for them. So
yeah,
definitely interesting. And if you get them on good deals, if you make nice big fat assignment fees, it makes it certainly worth it. Like our seller right now, Nate, that we're working with, who's calling the police on us because why is she calling? Just because she sees people marketing her property?
Yeah, she got locked up too high by 2 other wholesalers, and they were marketing her property for like $230 or something crazy. So she's like hoed out all over Facebook. And she found them, and I'm like, hey, like I can't control what happened before you and I entered our contract. And she's all just like, we sent an email yesterday saying, hey guys, I'd like to close before the end of the week.
Yeah, this week. Our closing date's like mid-February.
Like Nick just found a buyer like
that's crazy
yesterday, and our closing dates are arguably middle end of February 18th. She's like, hey, let's close this week. I sent her this big email. Was like, hey, like, unfortunately, we don't just get to change the closing date, whenever you'd like.
Yeah. And she's not only is she like just announcing to the title company, like, we're going to move closing up to this week, but she's also like, by the way, I've been in contact with the sheriff's office in regards to the people that are marketing my property without my permission. And if you haven't been contacted yet, they'll probably reach out to you for a statement. And I'm just like, dude.
Yeah, she sucks.
Yeah, people are just
so crazy.
But I just also imagine the people at the sheriff's office, like when she's calling in, like, what do you want us to do about this, lady? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
right.
Whole headache right there. I'm glad you found a buyer, because telling her to getting a price reduction on her would have been like pulling teeth. Oh my gosh. But that kind of ties into like what you and I talked about, like setting expectations properly with sellers.
Yep.
It's like, I'm glad I'm learning a lesson and making money at the same time, because learning a lesson and not making money obviously sucks a little bit more.
Yep. That's actually what I was going to talk about. So that's a good segue. But also, don't count your chickens yet, because we don't have a signed assignment or EMD. So we have a buyer that sounds interested, and it's through a repeat realtor. But we've also had plenty of buyers. I mean, even this week we had a buyer that said that they're going to take a deal, was our best offer, just go ghost. It's a weird market, dude. It's weird stuff. So you never want to start getting excited until we have earnest money deposit at title. So, but fingers crossed, it'll be good. But anyway, yes, that is a good segue into what I kind of wanted to touch on, and then we'll just open it up for general Q&A, help you guys with whatever else you got going on. But yes, that is very important, setting expectations with sellers and making sure that, especially on a deal that you don't know for sure that you can move, like for example, if we have a block house in Tampa, like in a good area of Tampa, and we can get it at a price that I know is a great price, then like I'll position myself as like the cash buyer. Like, hey, you can pack up the U-Haul, you can take off, right? I might assign it, I might not, but regardless, the deal's going through, right? And barring any crazy title issues. But if that's not the case, and you're locking up deals that, like Nate, it's a wood frame house in a decent area, but not the greatest area of St. Pete. A lot of those houses where it's especially wood frame, funky title or funky floor plans, stuff like that's where maybe we're locking it up a little bit tighter. You really, really, really want to set expectations with that seller of like, hey, this is like not a for sure price. Like, I'm still gonna have to get my people into the property, make sure that they agree with my numbers, X, Y, and Z. Because if you kind of position yourself as like, hey, everybody else is an idiot, I know exactly what I'm doing, sign here, it's a done deal. If God forbid you have to go back and renegotiate the price with them, that's going to make it a tough conversation, right? Because then they're going to be like, well, what do you mean? I thought you didn't need an inspection. I thought this was a done deal, blah, blah, blah. Versus if you kind of set stuff up where it's like, hey, the thing that I like to say when I'm with sellers and we're locking up a deal that's a little bit tighter is I make sure that they know, hey, I got to get my people in here. Like, I feel good about this price, but I do have to get my people in here to make sure that they agree with my numbers. And it's pretty rare that they don't. But there are times where they catch something that maybe I didn't see. So, you just kind of, you're setting the expectation for the seller that, hey, while I'm very confident in these numbers, like I'm not absolutely promising you and telling you, hey, this is a for sure done deal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because yeah,
Sure.
the last thing you want to do, because Nate, I guess you can probably talk a little bit more intelligently about like the expectations that you set with the seller, but it sounds like she's expecting you to be the one to close on this property like right now, ASAP type deal. And that just makes it harder on the dispo side and the transaction coordination side.
Yeah, pretty much nail or hammer on the nail right there. So Nick and I were talking about it. It's like I was so excited to get the deal, and I was like, now I'm at the point where it's like, just because you can get the deal doesn't mean you should.
Yep.
And there's backing yourself into a corner where you're gonna just percentage chance have a tough conversation. It's like,
Yeah.
need to not do that now.
Nick, I mean, that happened with the seller from Honeybee and me too. Remember, like, just because I didn't set the proper expectations, she was so like upset with me that she wouldn't go and reduce the price. But as soon as you called her and like it was a fresh situation and fresh, no emotional charge to it, she was like, "Oh yeah, that's fine."
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That was actually one of the easier negotiations that I've had too, because she was super motivated. And just like you said, because I came in as a fresh face, I offered her the same price that you were like, hey, trying to renegotiate too. But just because, like you said, the expectations might not have been set correctly, that's a possibility, then she feels betrayed. She feels like you haven't been honest with her. In that, like, hey, even if I renegotiate with you now, how do I know you're not going to do this to me again? Right. So yeah, and again, like if you're getting a deal, like there have been deals before where it's just a no brainer. And I know like, hey, even if we can't get a buyer for this for whatever reason, even though I know we're going to, like, I'll close on it. So I can go to that seller and tell them like straight up, I will buy this house, right? But if it's not that case, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to buy it if a buyer doesn't, or I wouldn't buy it if we can't sell it, then yeah, you want to set those expectations, because it makes it harder on the back end. Because there's things that happen, right? Especially right now in this market, it's a lot harder to sell deals right now, at least at like max prices, right? Before it was kind of like I could comp a deal and be like, yeah, I mean, we can probably push the price up to 170, but I bet like our offers won't come in any lower than like 160, right? But now we have so much just uncertainty in the market, and buyers are being so conservative that it's like that bottom number, it's a lot lower than it used to be. So it's like we might be able to sell it for 170, but I could also see these offers coming in at 145, right? And especially if it's, again, block or frame homes in not great neighborhoods, especially if there's funky layouts or like subflooring issues. Now, if you have a block 3-2 with multiple comps, like those are still going to fly off the shelf, because like we talked about in the last call, there's always going to be a buyer for that product, right? But when the market starts contracting, there's less buyers for those fringe deals, right? The houses that are on main roads, the houses that have funky floor plans, the houses that have really bad foundational issues. Buyers where they might offer at 60% before, now they're offering like 50 or sometimes even lower. So you just really want to set expectations with the seller that, hey, like I know what I'm doing. I feel confident in this price, but there are times that every once in a while my contractor sees something that I didn't. So I want to get my people in here. We can get them in here within the next week or so and have 100% answer for you within that due diligence period, right? And as long as you set those expectations, we almost never have sellers have problems with that. Right. They respect the honesty up front. And especially if you do it quickly, right? I don't like, and that's kind of another reason why I put it on my disposition manager. Like, hey, we want to put these out at like good prices that attract the better buyers, rather than if we think that we might be able to sell it for 180. I don't really want to put it out for 180 because I want to put it out at a price. I want to put it out at a price that's going to get a bunch of people interested, so that we can attract the best buyers, so that we can get feedback for the seller as quickly as possible. So that if we do have to do a price reduction, we're doing it in that first week rather than week 2 or week 3. And I've seen that before, where there's been times where I've even set expectations with the seller that we might have to revisit price, but then for whatever reason, maybe it's not the greatest neighborhood. Actually, I can remember specifically a house in Bradenton, a block house in Bradenton in a good neighborhood. It caught on fire, so it was a very big very big project. And I even set expectations with the seller, like, like, hey, I feel comfortable because we were negotiating, and I usually, what I'll do is I try to give them like my low anchor price is kind of like I can for sure sell this price deal. But if they won't take that, and in this situation, I think I was at like 215 and they wouldn't take anything below 240. And I could see the potential of us selling it up to like 260, 265. But again, I also saw, because it was a fire damaged house and a big rehab, I also could see the offers coming in around where we offered at this, or where that seller wanted the 240. I think it was 240. I offered 215. She wouldn't take less than 240. And so I went to her and I said, hey, I feel really, really good at 215. 240, I think I might be able to get that done, but I'm definitely going to have to get Orlando, my project manager. I'm definitely going to have to get and my dispositions manager, right? I'm going to have to get Orlando and my team in here to confirm my numbers, but I can do that within like a week, right? I'll be able to get you 100% answer within a week. Well, then Orlando, he saw the potential that I was like, hey, we could potentially sell this up to like 270. He thought that was a really good price, so he put it out at 270. But the problem was, we put it out at 270, which was like the ceiling of the price of what we thought we could possibly get. And so we weren't dealing with the most serious buyers, right? We're dealing with wholesalers, we're dealing with agents, we're dealing with other people that just aren't very serious. And so it took us like a week and a half to get people. And then we had to start dropping the price because we're like, hey, it's been 4 days. We don't have anybody that's asking for a showing yet, right? So we got to drop the price. And now we look up, and it's been a week and a half before we can get buyers to like go see the property. And then we have them come see the property, and then they offer where I thought they were going. They offer the lower end around where our contract price was. I think our best offer was literally at our contract price. And so then I went to the seller to try to renegotiate, even setting expectations that might have to happen. But I did it a week and a half to 2 weeks later, and I told them I'd get it done within a week. So and they didn't take the price reduction. They're like, no, we've been sitting around for 2 weeks waiting for you to get us 100% answer. And now you come to us on the last day and you tell us you need a 20K price cut. They're like, no, we're just going to sell to somebody else, right? Versus if I would have set those same expectations and then had Orlando put that deal out at 245, 250 and get a good amount of buyers in to where we could get feedback quickly, then that's probably a whole lot easier of a conversation, right? But because I set the expectations for, hey, I'm going to be able to get you 100% answer within a week, and then it was like a week and a half to 2 weeks, it made that conversation way harder. We didn't get the deal, and they end up selling to somebody else for the same price, who made like a $2,000 assignment fee. So like that's what happens when you don't set. And I even set the right expectations that I might have to renegotiate, but I told them that I'd do it within a week, and it was 2 weeks. So sellers very much pay attention to what you say. And I think that you'll have a lot easier time getting deals under contract and selling those deals if you just set the correct expectation with that seller, to where if you have to come back and address a problem, they don't feel like you lied to them or misled them, right? And you can still maintain trust. So, and that's something that we definitely started. That was a big learning lesson for our team. That was a big learning lesson for our team, was just that we needed to put out deals that were at an attractive price, right? So that we could get feedback quickly. We're not trying to stretch the price to get as much as we possibly can, at least on that marketed price. We want to put it out at a price where all the buyers are like, oh shoot, that looks like a great deal. I need to jump on that one, right? And then we might be able to get it bid up a little bit. And that's what we've been doing lately. In 2025, let me see, before I say anything incorrect. We've closed 3 deals in 2025, but we've already sold, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 deals that are pending with the buyer, and 5 of them we sold over asking, right? Because we started putting those deals out at an attractive price so that we could get feedback from those buyers quickly. And a lot of the time, if you put it out at an attractive price, you get the quality buyers that are going to see it, and they will bid up a little bit, right? And you can get them moved a lot faster, and you don't have to risk burning bridges with sellers.
So are you guys are putting your deals out even a little bit below your wholesale price or price to buyer, just to get a little bit more traffic on it?
If I think that a buyer will pay around 250 for it, we'll put it out at like 245, 240, 245, so that everybody, because here's the thing, and the way that I've been looking at it and talking with other buyers, like the real buyers, the cash, I'm good to close as soon as title's clear type buyers, they're just getting flooded with deals right now. They're getting flooded with deals right now. So not only do you have to present them a deal, but if you want them to move quickly on it, it's got to be a better deal than the other deals that they're looking at, right? So I just looked at it as, hey, if we're putting it out at like the tippy top of the market, then we're going to be dealing with the less serious buyers and the wholesalers and the people that are going to try to daisy chain it for like $1,000, that sort of stuff. And we've had that plenty of times where we put it out at that higher price, and after like a week, we have a realtor that says that he's got a serious buyer who we have go show the property to, and then that buyer never gives us an offer, or they sign an assignment and never put up EMD, that sort of stuff. If you try to max out price, it's the same thing with sellers, man. When the seller wants more than they're supposed to, when the seller wants more than like an experienced wholesaler will offer, a lot of the time they're dealing with wholesalers that are willing to lock it up at a higher price just to see what they can do, right? So that seller, again, they're not dealing with the most serious and like experienced wholesalers, because those wholesalers are like, nah, it's probably not worth my time because I'm probably gonna have to cancel that, right? Buyers think the same way. They're like, they want this at 180. I would need it at 165. So I'm not even going to bother offering on that. Like, I'm going to look at these other deals over here, right? Versus if you put it out at 165, 170, they're like, that's pretty close. I'm going to make an offer on that deal.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the way we've looked at it. I want us, when we put out a deal, I want everybody to be like, and we've seen it sometimes because I remember we put out a couple of deals that like, I went to meetups later that day, and there was like, people are like, dude, that deal you put out was smoking hot. Like a Crying Wind deal that we had a deal on Crying Wind that we put out a couple of weeks ago. And I went to a meetup later that night, and there was like other wholesalers that were saying like, yeah, I was trying to lock that up. That was a smoking hot deal. I was like, that's what I want, right? I want people to be like talking about our deals. Like, oh shoot, did you see that deal that 27 properties put out? That's how you know you have a good one, right? And that's how you get the best buyers in town to pull the trigger on that. And I would rather, especially if you're dealing with a seller like we have, Nate, that's like rushing him, wanting him to give her the moon and stars. You want to make sure that you're dealing with a buyer that is going to be able to perform quickly and not make your job harder with the seller.
Yeah.
So, yes, sir. So that's my spiel. Yeah, that's definitely that will definitely make things easier. And Nate, like you said, man, just because you can lock up a deal doesn't necessarily always mean that it's the best use of your time. And that's so hard to think about when you're just starting out. Because I remember how it was when I was just first starting to do deals. It was like anything that I could do to get a contract, I would do it, right? Even if I could only make a couple $1,000s. So they're like, dude, I can make a couple $1,000s. That's so much. That's better than nothing, right? And it is like, we'll still do that if you're able to set the right expectations with that seller and be like, hey, this is pretty high. I think I can make this work, but I'm definitely going to need some time to get my people into the property, make sure that our numbers are right, all that sort of stuff. So you're going to want a good due diligence period. Like this seller required 0 inspection period from Nate and I. So we just signed a contract with 0 inspection period, right? But now that seller at the same time is calling the police on us and telling the title company that we have to move up closing. And so just because you can lock up a deal doesn't always mean that it's the best use of your time, because I'm sure you've spent more time on the phone with Jeanette in the last week than you wanted to, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Especially when she came back to me, like I made her an offer in December for that 180 price with the 10-day inspection period, business day inspection period. And then after she locked herself up twice and then got canceled on, she came back to me, and I in the moment had all the willpower just to be like, hey, you're coming back to me. Like, this is, I'm not changing my offer. This was my offer. I know you want 0-day inspection period, but no, I didn't offer that to you, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Right. But dude, again, that's super common. I did the same exact thing when I was starting out, because you get so excited. You're like, dude, I see the ability to lock up a deal right now. The last thing I want to do is throw obstacles in the way of getting that property locked up. Right. So if you say, oh, well, I can still buy it, but I need a 15-day due diligence period, or I offered you 160. The market's changed since December. Now my offer is 150. Right. If you say that sort of stuff, you're probably thinking like, this is probably getting me further away from a signed contract and not closer to it, right? I'm sure that was what was going through your head. But now after this experience, the next time something like that comes up, you're going to be like, if you're demanding a 0 inspection period after you just went and got locked up by 2 other wholesalers, then you're just going to make this way too difficult for me, right? Like, I'll do this, but look, you went and took 2 other offers. So if you want to work with me now, these are the terms that we got to work at. Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason I could have been like, hey, well, now I'm at 175. You know, we were doing other projects. You know, you just wasted a month. You know?
Yeah. Hey, I bought 3 houses since I gave you that offer. I'm not just made of money. I don't just have a bunch of money sitting around.
Yeah.
The market's changed. We got other stuff going on. Like, I'll still buy it, but 170 was my December offer. It's January now. So what do you think about 170? Right.
Yeah.
So, and that would have allowed us to put it out at 180, which would have probably gotten more serious buyers on it quickly. And we may have been able to sell it quicker. And then you could tell her, hey, we're already good to go. As soon as title's clear, we're good to close. Right now, we're dealing with a buyer who came to us through a realtor who needs 2 weeks to close. So, yep. Powerful lesson. And like you said, you're learning these lessons and still making money. So that's the beautiful part of it.
And will you kind of like even pass up on a deal? If it's kind of like that, oh, I'm not really sure about these numbers, or maybe it's an area that you're not very familiar with, just so that way, like you said, you don't waste a bunch of time and energy on a deal that you could be spending on a much more sure of a deal.
Yeah, exactly. I actually lost a deal literally today. They closed with another wholesale. It was actually John at Easy Res, right? I offered this seller. I didn't even go out. I didn't even go out to see this seller because I thought 200 was too high, right? I offered, I think, like 175, 180, because I was like, I probably have to dispo this at 200, maybe a little bit more. But I'm not going to drive all the way to, I think it was in like Port Richey or Newport Richey. I'm like, I'm not going to drive all the way to Port Richey to meet this seller to maybe assign this for 5,000, but most likely have to renegotiate. Like, it's not even worth my time. I can work on other deals that are going to make us 20, 30,000. Right. And that's exactly what happened. I offered her 180. I was like, hey, if you have an offer for 200, I don't even know if it's worth me coming out to see that. I'm probably around 180. Just let me know if that buyer doesn't perform. Right. They locked him up. I think they sold it for like 203 or 205. So they still made a couple $1,000s, but like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to do that, right? And so yes, I do pass up on those deals if I'm not sure.
Okay, gotcha. You remember that Dade City property that I sent you the other day that I was like at the appointment?
Yes.
And like we came up with our MAO at like 80K because it was just like the comps were very strong. It was on a main road, and that exact same thing happened where I offered her 80K. She ended up selling it to someone else, someone that actually we know. And I'm pretty sure he ended up assigning it. But like, it kind of left me thinking, like almost questioning myself, like, dang, did I do the right thing of like offering like way more conservative just because I wasn't sure? Or should I have like really just pushed it and gone for, take the risk?
So again, if you're already there with that seller, that's where it's like, hey, if this price is where you think there's still maybe a chance, but I'm very unconfident in this price, that's where you want to set those expectations. Like, hey, here's exactly what I do in these situations. If we have a seller that, like, let's say in this Port Richey situation that I was just talking about, where the seller said, hey, I have another offer for 200. Let's say I was actually there physically with the seller. I wasn't on the phone with them, right? And I offer them 170. They're like, no, I couldn't do that. Like, I got another offer for 200K. Why would I take 170? Right? I would probably say something along the lines of like, 200, that's really, really high. That could work. Let me let Nate back in here. Like, that could potentially, that price could potentially work, but I'd really have to get my people in here. Let me tell you this. At that point, I would probably tell them, look, I'm a wholesaler. I'd say like, look, if I can make that price work, or if anybody can make that price work, it's probably going to be me because I have a huge buyers list. If this doesn't work for me, I know pretty much all the reputable fix and flippers in town. So like, if you can give me some time to market this to my list, I can probably bring you a buyer. And if it's not at that price, I'll let you know what that price is. And like, you know, we'll kind of readjust from there. Right. But you're kind of coming from the point of, hey, look, that's pretty high, but I'll do that as long as you understand that like I'm going to need to get my people in here. Right. So again, it's just setting expectations.
Gotcha. Yeah, because in that one, she had already told me at the beginning of the appointment, like, hey, no matter what offer you give us, we're gonna take the day to like think about it, because she had other people coming to see it. So it was kind of just like a shoot my offer and just wait. You know what I mean? So in a way, I'm kind of glad that I was a bit more conservative, just because I didn't have a chance to have that conversation and set those kind of expectations.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You never want to, and first of all, the seller that says, I want to get everybody in here and take the best offer, they're almost always going to get, they're like, those people are almost always going to deal with the wholesaler that offers too high and has to renegotiate with them. Right. So again, if I can have that conversation with that seller and like, they understand that, hey, I'm going to try to bring you that price, but like, there's a realistic chance that that's too high. And they show that they're going to be willing to like renegotiate if it comes to that, then I'll take the chance on that. Right. But if they're like, no, 200 or no deal, like whatever, a lot of the time I'd just pass on that. Because again, the more time, and I'm sure, well, Nate, if it works out and we sell this deal and he can make a little bit of money, then I'm sure he wouldn't regret that. But a lot of the time in those types of situations, if you lock up a deal too high and the seller is like has these super high expectations as far as like short timeline, no inspection period, all that sort of stuff. If you go and you don't sell that deal and you burn that bridge with that seller, then you kind of look up and you're like, man, I just wasted a lot of time. If I could go back, I would not have put that deal under contract because it just wasted so much of my time and energy. It got me down because I had to have a rough conversation with a seller. They got mad at me. You know what I mean? So it just kind of not only the time, but the energy that it takes and the disappointment. Because when we get a property under contract, we're already, I mean, I still do it, dude. I tell you guys not to count your money, but as soon as we get a deal under contract, I'm like, oh, that's probably a $20K fee. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just human nature. So if you lock that property up and then you have to cancel, then it's a negative experience that drains you in more ways than one, right? So if it's a tight deal, if you can't set those expectations with that seller and have them be receptive to those expectations, then I pass. Because I look at it as like, look, there's always going to be wholesalers that are willing to work for minimum wage, right? They lock up a deal for $150 and sell it for $151. That's great. That's not going to be me though, because I know from experience how big of a pain in the butt those deals are. And it's just not worth it, because you take the time that you could have spent, or you take the time that you spent with that seller to make $1,000, and you think about what you could have done with it if you talk to an actual motivated seller that would let you work under terms that you could actually perform under.
Yeah. The worst deal I've ever done was exactly that. I didn't trust my gut of like, oh, I'm going too high on this, and I was trying to make it work. And then it was the most stressful 3-month closing of my life, and I made $600. And I was like, dude, this is stupid.
The biggest headaches, or the smallest deals are the biggest headaches, and your largest deals are going to be the easiest ones. The easiest deal I've ever done to this day, we assigned for a $200,000 assignment fee. The biggest pain in the ass deal I've ever done, I think we made $1,500.
Yeah.
So yeah, I say that to Nate. Nate's been really good at sending pain in the ass sellers to me lately. So it's funny because we'll have the last seller.
Thanks.
The last seller, we had a bunch of different stuff. She went ghost for a little while. She didn't want to extend, like we needed to extend like 3 days for closing. After she went like 2 weeks without talking to the title company. We tried to extend closing by like 3 days, and she made it this big deal. We finally, after maybe making 15, 20 phone calls to her, finally got her to accept the extension. And then the day before closing, she goes on vacation and doesn't tell anybody. And she was, or wait, maybe I'm mixing up sellers. Maybe this was your seller, Raphael. There was one that was like in a mountain in North Carolina.
Oh, that was me. Yeah.
That was you. Yeah. And that was another small deal.
It was
another small deal. So
exactly.
Nate, what was your seller that did? She went ghost for a while, and then
she went ghost, and then it was like getting an extension was a big issue. But there was twice during the month that we had the deal where she would just go rogue,
yeah.
and not talk to us.
Yep.
And then with say like no and another frame house that's almost the exact same thing that happened like with us on this one where it was like, okay, frame deal. It looks kind of turnkey. So like you're being kind of conservative on the rehab, but then like, 1925, even if it looks like there's not subflooring issues, there's just always subflooring issues.
Yeah.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, if you see a wood frame, if you see a wood frame house that's built before like 1950, just assume there's subflooring issues.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I learned a painful lesson last year of definitely not counting your chickens before they hatch, because I had a deal. It was a perfect deal, and I even told you, Nick, about it. I was like, dude, this is so smooth. This is great. I assigned it the day of, 35K fee, deposited E&D, everything was beautiful. And then come back, we had title issues, and the whole deal freaking blew up. And I just, and 100%, because I put so much like emotion and excitement, when I felt like it was ripped away, and especially for like nothing I could have done because it's just title issues, it took me a while to like kind of get over it.
Yeah,
I was so mad.
Yeah, it's deflating.
It took me like a week or two to kind of like, all right, dude, like let's get back up and just keep going, because I was pissed.
Yep. 100%, man. So and it's one thing to do that over a good deal where it's like, man, I put in a lot of time, but I see how like there was one thing that kept me from making this 30-40K fee, and that sucks. But it sucks even more when a $2,000 deal falls apart after you worked for 15 consecutive hours or 15 cumulative hours talking to the seller, talking to the title company, going and showing the property 5 different times because you went and showed the property and all the buyers offered too low. So you had to keep bringing buyers in and all this sort of stuff. You put in all of this time, all this effort. You're dealing with the seller's problems. You're playing therapist with that seller. And then the deal cancels and you're like, man, it makes it hard to get back on the horse. Right. So you want to minimize those. So yeah, we'll pass up deals if they're tight and the seller is not willing to work with the expectation that, hey, we're going to get our people in there and use our due diligence and see. That's what we say a lot of the time is like, hey, we're definitely gonna have to use our due diligence here. I'm gonna have to get my people in, get a scope of work, make sure that like they agree on the numbers, because this is definitely a little bit on the higher end. I think we might be able to make it work, but I'm definitely gonna have to use my due diligence period here. And if they're not okay with that, then it's probably a deal that's going to be more of a headache than anything.
Yeah. And this is kind of off subject of today's meeting. Do you have your acquisitions people or even yourself make offers before actually seeing the property? Like, is that kind of how you guys do it?
Yeah, a lot of the time we give price ranges though, and like what we want to do is we just want to make sure that we're speaking the same language as that seller before we go out there. We have the same price expectations. That's actually a lot of the time what we'll say. Either Gabe or my lead manager or whatever, if they're booking the appointment, they'll say, hey, so it sounds like we'd like to come out and see the place, but I just wanted to, this is assuming they didn't give us an asking price, right? Because obviously we're going to want to see what their expectations are on price, but you're going to have some people that they don't want to give you an asking price. It's like, come out and see it, just check it out and make me an offer and we'll go from there. It's like, well, I would love to. I'd love to come out and see the house and meet you, all that sort of stuff. But I kind of want to make sure we're speaking the same language before I come out, because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time, right? So we'll kind of give them like, that's where we'll either first, we might say, I want to make sure that we're speaking the same language. So do you have a price in mind so I can kind of see if that's even going to be near where I can pay, right? And sometimes they'll give you a price, sometimes they won't. They'll be like, oh, well, what's your range? What are you thinking? And that's when we'll throw out like a range of maybe like 40 to 50% of ARV, right? It's kind of like, well, based off the neighborhood. Or one of the things we say, well, a lot of the time we're buying properties in that neighborhood for like 130 to 150. Is that kind of what you were thinking? And they might be like, oh no, I wouldn't sell for anything less than 300,000, right? And then it's like, well, I'm glad I didn't just drive an hour through traffic to come see you, right? Knowing that we were that far off on price, right? Or they might give you a counter offer and be like, nah, like that's probably too low, but if you can come up to like 160, we might have a deal, right? Then you're like, okay, dang, like they're actually reasonable. And if they're saying 160 on the phone, you can probably get them to 140, 145 on the appointment. But if you go out there because you didn't clarify their price expectations and you didn't want to make sure that you're speaking the same language. If you go out there and you go through the whole process and you see their property and you take pictures and you spend 20 minutes building rapport with them, and then you finally get down to the numbers and you say, okay, well, I'm thinking, you know, maybe 140. And they're like, dude, get out of here. Like, I'm not selling for less than 275. Right. Then you're like, man, I just wasted all this time.
Yeah, I think in the beginning I used to do that a lot just because it was like exciting to get an appointment. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going on an appointment. It's almost like a productive procrastination almost without like setting the correct expectations.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why, again, I always say, like, disqualifying sellers is just as important as qualifying sellers. Like, the two biggest mistakes that I see wholesalers making is that they do inconsistent marketing, right? They cold call one week, they do direct mail the next week, they do SMS the next week. They're never doing anything consistently long enough to build a pipeline and see results for it. That's the first mistake. Second mistake is they're spending too much time with bad leads. They go on that appointment where they don't have an asking price from the seller. That seller doesn't have a clear expectation, or that seller doesn't have a clear problem to solve. And they're like, yeah, I'd be interested in selling. Why don't you come out here and check out the property and we'll just kind of take it from there, right? A lot of people will go on that appointment, right? And especially here in Tampa, let's say you live in Tampa and that seller's in Newport Richie. Bro, that's going to take you 45 minutes to get there. You're going to be on the phone with that seller, or you're going to be at the appointment with that seller for 30 minutes to an hour, and then you got to drive back. Like, that burns most of your day, right?
Yeah.
And
that drive back sucks.
And the drive back sucks because you're like, man, I just offered this guy 140,000. He kicked me out of the house because he wanted 300, and the ARV is 300.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's huge because I used to do that too, where it's like, oh man, this is progress, right? This guy wants me to come out and see the house. Like, I have to go see the house. This is what I've been working for. But if it's not a motivated seller and it's somebody that will never accept a price in your price range, then that appointment is a waste of time. It might be good in the sense of it gets you more comfortable talking to sellers. It gets you kind of in the rhythm. Because I remember my first appointment, I was shaking. I remember being super nervous at my first appointment. So, like, there is value. I don't want to say it's a complete waste of time because you'll get more comfortable with talking to sellers and going on appointments. But, like, that in itself is not going to get you closer to a deal because you're talking with a seller that is most likely, if they're going to sell, they're going to put it on the market with a real estate agent, right? They're not motivated enough to take an offer that you actually can make money at.
Right. And just like having that range, like giving that kind of like soft range to a seller, kind of, because one thing I've noticed too is, especially in this market where it's still very competitive, like, speed kind of kills all deals. You kind of want to move fast as much as you can, at least. Does giving that soft offer kind of put it in the seller's mind of like, okay, this guy's serious, like, I'm really going to entertain that, as opposed to, like, because one thing I've noticed I've done a lot is, like, I'm trying to be so, like, correct and perfect with my numbers that I'll take too long, you know what I mean? And then, like, they'll get an offer from someone else, and by now instead of competing with no one, I'm competing with 2 or 3 offers.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I mean, people, especially a motivated seller, they are going to like that you work quickly. Yeah, okay, for sure. So, and even that number, it doesn't even have to be like oh, I've comped it and this is what I can offer you based off of the information. It's like, hey, don't hold me to anything like this, but based off of just the conversation here and kind of looking at other houses that we bought in the area, we're probably going to be somewhere between like 140 to 150, maybe 160. Like, are we even speaking the same language here? And that kind of gives you, you're not offering them, right? It's like, hey, I want to make sure that we're kind of on the same page here. I'm buying houses between 140 and 160 in this area. Are we speaking the same language? And if they get mad, it's like, look, I didn't offer you that. I'm wanting to make sure that we have the same expectations. Right. You can absolutely, this 200K price that you want, you could probably get that if you put it on the market, hired a real estate agent, fixed it up, blah, 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 all the things. But if you want to sell the property quickly, I can do that. But like, this is kind of the range that I got to be in. Is that worth it for me to come out there or no?
Gotcha. So it's like a stress test almost.
Exactly. A lot of the time, if we do make an offer, it's not anywhere near our MAO, right? We're always trying to get a first offer, a max allowable offer. We're always trying to get that first asking price from that seller. But if they won't give us an asking price, we're way lowballing, and we're not lowballing in hopes of them accepting it. Sometimes they do, and then it's wow, that's amazing, right? But more often, that price that we throw out, it's more just to gauge. It's like a shot across the bow, right? To see like how they react, because they're either going to tell you to go kill yourself, or they're going to give you like a realistic price, a counter offer, or they might just say, nah, that's too low, but if you could come up maybe a little bit from that, then we might have something, right? So you're just trying to see where their expectations are. Are they somebody that wants way, way, way more than I could ever pay them, or are they somebody that's going to be negotiable?
Right. And you can probably even frame it in a way that, like, if it is like they do feel like, oh, that's fucking ridiculous, they're still not like just hanging up on you. Like if you were to say like, oh, we see investors buying houses in this area for around this price. Like if I were to offer you that, would you just tell me to kick rocks? Like something like that. That way you can say, like you said, oh, I'm not offering you that. I'm just saying if that were the case.
Yeah. Another thing that we'll say, another way that we'll frame that, like that shot across the bow to kind of feel out how they're going to react, is we'll say, how would you feel if somebody came and offered you X, Y, and Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling you that was my offer. How would you feel if somebody offered you like 140? We've never, and like, if you guys are, obviously, if you're new to talking to sellers, like you might think that these are things that might cause friction, but especially if you say it confidently, like I promise you it doesn't. And if it does, if they get pissed, they're not a lead.
Right.
Most of the time, if they get angry at that, they're not a motivated seller. They're not somebody that you're going to work with anyway. So again, you're disqualifying that lead. Disqualifying leads is just as important as qualifying leads.
Right. And again, you're doing that just to see if you can get that, like, out of that reaction that they have, like them flipping out their actual number.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I would think just like you're saying too is, if you come in with a low ball number and they're like, oh, no way, I go, well, what kind of number are you thinking? You know what I'm saying? That way I have some kind of guideline. That way we can both negotiate somewhere.
Exactly.
I gotta have some kind of negotiating part to where we both can work together. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So
exactly.
if you think I'm way low, that will give me a number. That way we can work. You know what I'm saying? Work together on it.
Yep. 1000%. There's been times that we've said stuff like, and I've used this before, where it's like, look, if they're like just wanting your first offer, they only want to hear your offer. They won't give you an asking price. I'll say, like, look, I'm an investor. I would buy the house for $100 if I could, right? But I'm sure that that's not what you want to sell for, right? So instead of me potentially instead of me potentially offending you with a lowball offer, why don't you tell me what you want, and I'll see if I can work up to that.
Right. See if we can negotiate from there.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you do give them that low offer, like what would you think if somebody offered you 140 and they're like, oh, hell no, I would never sell for that. And then they won't tell you what they would sell for, or you say like, okay, well, then what's a good number for you? And they won't give you one. Then it's kind of like, well, you're not giving me anything to work off here. Right. Like,
say, yeah, I have no idea what you're asking, what you're, or what your expectations are. So I've got no guideline to go by, you know what I'm saying? So really, you're just making it harder for us to work together.
Yeah. And again, be honest with them. We tell people all the time, look, we're investors. We're trying to make money. We want to get this property for as cheap as we can. That's just the business. We're trying to make money. This is how we provide food for our families. So we're trying to buy properties as low as we can. I understand that you also want to get as much as you possibly can for the property. So instead of me potentially offending you with a lowball offer, why don't you tell me what your magic price is?
Give me a number.
You tell me what your magic price is, and if I can make it work, I'll make it work. And if I can't, I'll tell you where I need to be, and maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle, right?
Right. Yep.
So, yep.
Yeah, I can just imagine a lot of distressed people about, just totally just flipping out on you and stuff. And hey, I understand. I know this is a stressful part, but it doesn't have to be like this. You know what I'm saying? Just I'm trying to work. I'm trying to work with you, and the easier you work with me, the easier this fucking deal will go easy, So
I'm an investor. If you don't tell me what you want, I'm going to.
Like you're saying too, exactly. I'm an investor, so I have no idea what you're asking.
I'm an investor. I'm in this business to make money. I would buy this house from you for $1,000 if you're willing to sell it to me for $1,000. So if you are not going to give me an asking price, then obviously if I have to make the first offer, it's not going to be my best offer because I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. So instead of me doing that, and instead of us playing these games, why don't you just tell me what you want and I'll see if I can make that work. And if I can, I'll be honest with you about it. Right. That a lot of the time that brings their wall down to where they're like, oh, I'm not dealing with a big bad investor. That a lot of the time I feel like these sellers, they think of us as like people in like suits that pull up in Suburbans with like duffel bags full of cash. Right. So like there a lot of them, they have their guard up. So if you can kind of show that like, hey, I'm not trying to like negotiate with you or play hardball. I'm an investor. I'm trying to make money, but I'm also trying to create win-win solutions, right? Or I'm trying to create win-win situations. If you don't give me a price, I have to go low because I don't want to shoot myself in the foot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yep. Being honest, setting expectations, that's half of the business, man. Being honest with people, setting the correct expectations and communicating. That's like most of the business.
Yeah.
100%. And I think like a lot of times we get sellers coming at us this way because they are getting so many calls and so many people that either don't give them an offer or don't act honestly with them. Mm-hmm. So immediately they're just like, all right, what's your offer? You know what I mean? And you kind of have to work your way around that to bring them, you know, to want to actually talk and resolve the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, I mean, you can't even blame them, man, because some of these people that, especially if you're on like a pre-foreclosure list or something like that, bro, they're getting called by everybody. So of course they're going to have their guard up. And there's a lot of people that just frankly do not do this business the right way. There's a lot of very uneducated people in this business that are making offers on properties. And a lot of them use intimidation tactics. They use big bad investor tactics. And so it's not surprising that you have sellers that are already like in, you know, a stressful situation that they just have their guards way up. So half of our job is breaking down those walls to make them understand, hey, we're not trying to steal your house from you, right? Yeah. We're trying to help you.
Dude, I had a seller that was a pre-foreclosure seller, and she literally had her list pendants. So her very first step of the foreclosure process filed the day before, and some investor called her and told her, hey, this house is going to be sold at auction and you're going to get kicked out with your kids in 30 days.
Yeah. Like
you got to sign now, like, or you're going to get kicked out. And then I called her. I was like, she told me that's what he said. He's like, oh, I sold them for a steal of a price. And he was like, yeah, he told me I was going to get kicked out. And I was like, no, like this is a year-long process. Like you have time. You can make a decision. You can try to save it.
Yep.
And she was like, oh my God, like I can't believe it. I already signed the contract and everything. And yeah, I saw he filed a memorandum. It was like, oh man.
Yep. Yeah, dude, there's a lot of, it's not surprising. And it's I can't argue with the fact that wholesalers have as bad of a reputation as they do, because there's a lot of really bad ones that take advantage of people. And like I said, they use intimidation tactics and they straight up lie to people to try to get contracts. And they might win the battle every once in a while, right? They might get a deal that makes some money, but they're not going to win the war. Those people are not going to be around for a long time. The people that have business models like that, they're here today and gone tomorrow. There's very rarely people that transact like that they stay in business for long term. It's the people that actually genuinely create solutions and like try to help people. Call it God, call it the marketplace, call it the universe, call it karma, whatever. Those people that take advantage of people, I've seen it time and time again. They might get a deal. They might get a deal that makes them $50,000, $60,000. Great. But where are they in 5 years?
Yep. And you see that especially in states like South Carolina, where they ended up making wholesaling illegal in a way,
right? Because of stuff like that. Yep, that's exactly why. So I think that regulation is coming to the wholesaling world, like I mean, it already is to a lot of states, and I welcome it because it'll get rid of the fat, bro. It'll get rid of those people that are transacting unethically, and it'll just create more opportunity for the people like us that are actually trying to serve people. Of course, we want to make money. I want to make as much money as I possibly can. But I also know that comes from treating people well, doing right by people in the long term, right? There's been plenty of times where I've been in situations where I could have maybe screwed somebody over and made an extra $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, right? But I believe in my heart that if I were to do that, God's not going to there's going to be other success that God's going to block from coming my way because I didn't treat that person correctly, right? Versus in other situations, maybe I'll pass up that opportunity to make that money because it's not right and it would hurt this person.
Yeah.
I might lose that deal, but then another one comes around the next week that'll make me double that, right?
That's
So,
right.
You got to have a long-term perspective of it. You got to have, you got to look at it long-term. You got to look at it as in wholesaling, especially like your reputation is everything. It's a small world here in Tampa Bay. Like you think it's a big town and it is a big town, but man, especially in the real estate investing world, man, everybody knows.
Like I said, yeah, just like you're saying, I mean, negative word travels way faster than positive word.
Yep.
And it's always been like that, you know what I mean?
Yep. No one deal is ever worth your reputation. And especially once you build a business and you have like an online presence and stuff, all it takes is one bad review. One bad review where somebody talks about how you screwed them over, you were unethical, you lied to them, X, Y, and Z. That's all that seller talks about. I think we have like 50 or 51 reviews. Almost all of them are 5 stars talking about how amazing we are, how we're just the most ethical company ever. There's one seller that they were not even a serious seller. They didn't even want to sell the property. They literally just wanted to know what we would pay for it if they decided to sell. And it was on a week. They called off of our radio ads, right? So they fill out a form. We call them. Gabe realizes this is not really a lead. They just want a free appraisal is what we call it. They just want to know what, if we decided to sell, what would somebody pay for it? And Gabe was busy with other leads, so he forgot to call that seller back, right? He just, whatever, I'll get back to him later. He never did. That seller left us a 1-star review saying that we never got back to her on an offer. She felt disrespected, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. I've had many, many sellers bring that one review up. They don't talk about the 49, 50 reviews of people talking about how amazing we are. They will bring up that one person that left a 1-star review. So, and that's over somebody just saying, yeah, they never called me back. Imagine if it was